Hi, everybody. This is Brian Antonson talking to you today about audio for usually nonfiction production. Something that we haven't talked about really yet. And I'm using a camera. This is the manual for it. We bought a couple of these a while ago. They're Panasonic AVCHD 80P. I call them just the AVC cam because that's the format that they shoot in. And they're not great cameras. They're basically one of the cheapest ENG cameras that we could get 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. So they have like a really small sensor in them, so they're really bad in low light. But what I like about them is that they look and feel like a traditional ENG camera, which normally costs a lot of money. Nowadays, most of these cameras are very, very small. And it takes kind of like a lot of money basically to get a big form factor of the shoulder mount camera. So traditionally, when you hear the term ENG camera, it's a shoulder mount camera that is built in such a way that the operator can both shoot and run audio at the same time. So that's really what the design of this kind of a camera is for, these ENG cameras. And so while this is not a class on production, it is a class on audio for production. And so you sort of need to know this part of it, because frankly, a lot of the paid work is doing nonfiction kind of work. So this part is important. So I'm showing you the audio part mostly of this kind of a camera. So this is the camera. This is the AVC cam. It's by Panasonic. And this menu here that I'm going to show you is very similar on almost every kind of camera that's an ENG camera. The first thing that you need to know is that, these kind of cameras have two inputs for audio. They're stereo input. So there's a left and a right channel, a channel 1 and a channel 2 that you can plug into. So if you're looking at this kind of a camera to run audio on, let's just talk about what this is, so that you understand it. So there's a line mic switch for channel 1, and there's also a mic plus 48 for channel 1. And then you see the same thing for channel 2. Here's channel 2, and there's also a mic line switch, and then there's also a plus 48 volts. So this is a perfect final exam kind of question on what all of those things mean. The plus 48V stands for 48 volts, and that's basically phantom power. Some cameras might call that phantom power, but oftentimes it'll call it plus 48. It's possible that some cameras might also have a lower voltage, plus 24 or plus 28. Plus 48 is the most volts that you'll see, I think, for phantom power. So when do you want to have that on? When you're using a condenser microphone without a battery. If you aren't sure, you're probably okay leaving phantom power on. I almost always use phantom power on. I was told recently by an audio technician that sensitive microphones will pop if you feed them too much voltage, but that's not been the case. That's not been my experience over a lot of years of shooting. So, but I'm just saying that as a caveat because someone who knows more about audio than me told me that. But that being said, I almost always leave phantom power on. So, and I've never had an issue like that. So anyway, most of our condenser microphones, we've taken the batteries out because they corrode after a year or two and they damage the microphone. So anyway, if you know that you're using a dynamic mic, which doesn't need batteries, or or you know that there's a working battery in the microphone, you can turn this to be off, and it won't feed the microphone any power. But otherwise, keep it on. Okay. Obviously, this is where you would plug your microphone in for to operate this camera. It's an XLR input, which is the standard professional input for production microphones. DSLRs aren't going to have XLR inputs on them, nor will they have 2 channels of audio, which is one of the reasons why they're not usually used in nonfiction production. Okay, let's talk about the switch here. Switch between mic and line. If you're taking a feed from a microphone, you switch it to microphone. If you're taking a feed from another source, you probably switch it to line. Now, this begs the question, what is a non-microphone audio source? The most common one is a mixer. If you're going from a mixer, taking an audio feed from a mixer, most mixers, particularly nice ones, like big ones, will have a mic or a line output option. The difference is that a line option is a higher voltage audio signal. So it's just more robust than a microphone level. So it behooves you to take a line level from a mixer if you have the opportunity to. But if you low level cheap mixers, or even like a Zoom recorder, if you're taking a feed from a Zoom recorder, oftentimes won't have the option to give you a mic out level. A line level. It won't give you the option to switch. It'll be one or the other. And it will say it in the menu setting. So you just have to know what the input is. If it's coming from a mic, then it's going to be mic. If it's coming from another source, you need to find out if it's a mic level or a line level. The reason why you need to know that is because if you do give a mic, if you do give a line level to a channel and you're set for mic, it will pop the preamp. That I can tell you. I've seen that happens frequently. So anytime that you're taking from a non-microphone source, you'd be wise to switch to line level because it's safer. If you do that and you're still not getting audio to run through, then you can track it down and you'll probably find that it's giving you a mic level input. But for 95% of the time, you're taking audio. I guess I shouldn't say that because it really depends on what job you're doing. But if you're just doing audio in the field by yourself, your audio is going to be coming from a microphone, in which case it's there. But if you're shooting a concert, if you're shooting a wedding video and you're taking a feed from an audio board, then you want to switch it to line. Okay? All right, does that make sense? If that doesn't, raise your hand. Oh, I'm being recorded, sorry. You have to ask me next time I see you, or send me an email. Okay, but that's laying out what all of this is. Now for your assignment that you'll be doing upcoming, you're going to be taking an input from a handheld mic into channel 1. It is from a dynamic mic, so you could turn phantom power off. But like I said, I normally just leave it on just to be, in case you don't know, because sometimes you don't know, and I've never had a problem. But it is going to be from a microphone source, so I'm going to turn that to mic. Okay, so that's how you set that up on an ENG camera. Now let's go to the side of this camera, and on the side of this camera is another feature that makes this camera good for ENG production. Now, this is the smart side of the camera, meaning like if you're, when you're shooting with this camera, that panel is facing you, right? So when you're shooting, you can be operating the controls with your left hand if you need to. So if you're So it's basically, there's a reason why all of these buttons are on the smart side of the camera. It's in order to allow the operator to control all of these settings while they're shooting. And skilled operators can do that. You shoot with both eyes open, and you really can learn how to multitask while you're shooting. The thing that I want to really emphasize today, and I'll show you a couple of these other things very quickly, but I'm not going to be holding you responsible for that. But this is the audio section, and this is what I want to focus on in this class. So we'll start with the easy part first. That's your monitor level. This is a speaker. This is a headphone jack. So when you are routing audio into this camera, okay, it will route through either the headphone jack or the speaker. And notice when this is on your shoulder, that speaker is right up against your ear, which is really convenient. This is basically your headphone or speaker volume. On a lot of cameras, it's referred to as monitor. Okay, so that's your monitor control. You can turn it up and down while you're shooting. It does not affect your record level. Okay, so that you get in your VU meter in your viewfinder, which you'll be looking at as you're recording. Okay, and that is what these two are. Obviously, channel 1, record level, channel 2, record level. You see it says audio level there. And you can adjust it. And in your viewfinder, you will see channel 1 and channel 2 on the bottom portion of your screen. You'll see the VU meter. Okay, so that's how you set your level. Let's talk about that for a minute. In the case of this weekend, you're going to be walking around. All right. You're going to be walking around with a reporter who's going to be talking to people. Hey, you know, I don't know, maybe you're talking about the flood. Hey, what happened in the flood? You know, whatever you're talking about. Should the state be spending more money on emergency preparedness? Or should we be moving out of Sonoma County because it's unsustainable, because it's crazy here? Whatever you're asking people. So let's say that you have a reporter who's really loud, like me, and then you're talking to someone who's soft-spoken. You might need to raise the record level while the interview is happening. And kind of, you know, similar to that is where the reporter puts the microphone. Ideally, the microphone should be placed right in front of their face, but like when they go to talk to someone, if they're putting their microphone far away from their face, that's also going to affect the record level and make it much lower. So experienced reporters, which I don't expect any of you will put the microphone at the same distance as themselves, basically to help the operator not have to toggle the levels, okay? But you, whoever the camera operator is, will see it in your viewfinder and will need to adjust it, okay? And you adjust it there. What should your VU meter be set to? Bouncing in the middle, more towards the upper quarter, so like 75% across, which in most VU meters are between -6 and -12 dB. But basically what I just say is bouncing in the middle. That's where you want your record level set. Okay, one other thing I want to show you on this panel here. That are these switches underneath. So, like I said, this camera and most ENG cameras have at least 2 channels of audio. Newer cameras have 4 channels of audio, which is really cool. This camera has 2, a left and a right, channels 1 and channel 2. Now you can set here whether the input is coming from the rear, in which case it's this XLR inputs, or coming from the front, which is coming from the built-in microphone here. You can tell the camera which audio source to take audio from on which channel by these switches here. Okay, now as you can imagine, the camera mic, which is called the front mic, the front input, is not good. The handheld mic that you plug into through the XLR cable is going to be much better. But it's nice to have a backup in case one microphone goes out, you have the other, or just for scratch track. So it's kind of a standard in the industry that channel 1 is your primary audio. In our case, it's going to be the XLR mic, which will be coming from the rear XLR input. And then your backup audio you can use from the front on the camera, camera mic. Last switch is audio or manual. Now, this is a pretty cheap camera. This is an entry-level ENG camera. And so there isn't a separate auto or manual selection for each channel. So it's one or the other. So most cameras do not do well in auto audio. Some auto features work okay on some cameras, like auto white balance oftentimes works okay, but audio usually not. So I almost always set my switch from auto to manual when I'm doing audio. The only time I would put that to auto is if I had no other choice. If I was doing something really kinetic and I couldn't monitor my audio or ride my levels while I was shooting, then I'll put it in auto and cross my fingers. But if I can keep my eye on it and keep a finger on the VU meter while I'm shooting, I'll keep it in manual and do that. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Quick recap. Phantom power for channels 1 and 2. Mic and line levels for channels 1 and 2. Mic level comes from a microphone, audio source from a microphone, which is most of the time. Line level comes from a mixer, usually, or maybe a DVD player or some other audio source. The input itself is XLR inputs. The phantom power is used if you're using a condenser mic. Then it's on if there's no battery. Here is your headphone jack, speakers for the monitor level, your monitor headphone volume control, channels 1 and 2 VU meter record level. That's where you set the record level, most important. Auto to manual for channels 1 and 2. We'll shoot in manual. And then where do your two channels get their input from? Is it from the camera mic, which would be front, which would refer to this microphone? Or is it going to be set to rear, which refers to the XLR input on the back of the camera? All right, that is pretty much everything that you need to know for the assignment and from this camera. The other buttons, I'll probably have this camera pre-set up for you so that the operators don't need to do anything else because, you know, I don't want to make this a class about the camera. I wanted to make it about audio. So I'll kind of put the rest of this in a form of auto. All right, if you want to read anything else about this camera, feel free to look it up. But I'll have them available in class next week so you can take a look at them. And if you have any other questions, please let me know. Thanks for watching.